What's up, bikers? Welcome to episode 157 of the B1KER Bar Podcast live stream. Today, we're going to have Syd Macky on. I'm super stoked to talk to them. It's been a long time since they've been on. If for some reason you don't know who they are, they're professional mountain bikers. They're also YouTubers, and they're married. So I feel like they got a lot going on. So nonetheless, before we get started, I have been recently talking to you guys about some of the companies that have helped me out over the years, and like I said, not sponsored, but I just kind of want to try to share some of the love for them. So the last couple of weeks I've been talking about Tasco, and honestly, with the heat the way it is their Phantom line is like super lightweight for summer. And I can't speak highly enough about it. Honestly, it was a pair of the Phantom shorts that got me to switch from the brand of shorts that I was wearing before, just because they're so lightweight. It's I don't even know. It's like a dream. It's like a dream come true. If I could only get a chamois that was that light too, then it would be money. But until Tasco starts making chamois, I guess you can just buy shorts from them. If you use the code SCOUT-BIKER, you'll save 15 or 20%, something of that nature. And they also have some gloves. If you like the lightweight summer gloves, they have a Phantom line of gloves as well. So I have several different colors of those because I'm a big fan of the summer gloves. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, you'll miss out. And a good example is just the other day, Tasco had a sale where you bought one item and the second item was 75% off. It was a really good deal. And that's what I posted on Instagram and Facebook. And those of you guys that follow me over there probably saw that, got to use the code, save some money. So do me a favor, swing by Instagram or Facebook, whichever one that you do. Give me a follow and keep up with what's going on in the channel. I also want to say thanks to everybody on Patreon. Honestly, this is a grassroots thing, man. Both channels are 100% being supported by Patreon. You guys mean a lot to me, and it's your support that helps keep things going. So, for instance, there's a new Sony camera that I just bought that's really gonna help me level up some of the stuff on the BIKER channel. So, and also potentially I might be using it in here. I'm thinking about trying to maybe film up in my office instead of out here in the garage. So in the summer when it's 1,000,000,000 degrees, then I'll be in air conditioning. It'll be like I leveled up myself. So anyways, thank you all on Patreon. Really, really means a lot. It's as little as $1, or you could throw $5 into it and really help me out. So it means a ton. It really does. Every time I write a letter to somebody that's in the $5 tier, it's, I don't know, I want to say not emotional, but it's definitely something that hits the heart. You're like, man, somebody actually believes in me enough to support this channel. That's rad. Feels good. Anyways, let's go ahead and bring Syd and Macky on. How are you guys?
Hey.
We're good. It's been too long.
It has been so long. Like we were saying before the show, 2021 was the last time that we talked.
I think it was 2020.
Huh?
Dang.
I think it was 2020.
No, 2020. Yeah. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. One of those.
I forgot our conversation from 37 seconds ago. Yeah. So, I mean, there's been so much that's happened in that amount of time. The first thing that comes to mind for me is, I think you guys bought a house in that time, right?
We did. We are sitting in it right now.
We are. We obviously don't have the nice setup like you do with all the lights glowing, and I don't know.
We do have nicer setups, but we are benefiting from the joys of home ownership, and our air conditioning is not working, so we are hiding in the basement.
That makes sense.
You know.
So you could relate with me when I was talking about us not being in the garage.
Yeah.
So what made you choose where you're at for your house? Because you guys were kind of the vagabonds for a while, living in the van, and you had the whole country as experience. So
yeah, so we knew we wanted to be in New Mexico. Macky's family is in New Mexico. We love New Mexico. We had been sort of vaguely based in Taos up until the pandemic, and then we were more based in Taos because it wasn't really viable to be wandering around in a van. And we have always really liked Los Alamos, where we ended up buying a house, because the trail access is just insane. Like, we can just go out our garage and ride pretty much as long as we want to.
Yeah, it's like 3.5 minutes to trail, and then we could pretty much ride forever. So that's nice.
Awesome.
Yeah, I would say that is pretty much like mountain biking was our main criteria for where we were gonna
Definitely
live. Yeah.
Yeah, we've talked about moving out of California, and every time we talk about it, I'm like, man, we have such good riding where I live that I feel like, man, I don't know like what stacks up against it, you know?
Totally. Yeah, we chose here because northern New Mexico, which is where we are, has the mountains of Colorado and the population of nothing, basically. So like you'll go out and ride for 4 hours and you'll come back and you'll be like, guess what? I saw someone on the trail today.
Right.
So we're pretty used to just having the trails to ourselves all the time.
What's the weather like there?
It's generally pretty nice. It's been quite warm this summer, but I don't think we're alone in that for sure. And winter we get decent snow. I mean, it's not getting better, but we do have a little local ski area, so we can ski. It's not hot compared to like Albuquerque or southern New Mexico, because we are at 7,200 feet at our house, and it's all up from there. So
we're complaining about it being hot, and it's like high 80s. We're like, it's so hot, we're dying.
It's not Phoenix, for sure.
Yeah. My daughter lives in San Francisco. She goes to school there, and if it hits like 80 degrees, everybody in San Francisco is like dying.
Yeah.
They're like, this is ridiculous. Meanwhile, in Sacramento, it's like 110.
Oh man, I would really struggle.
Honestly, I don't the heat doesn't bother me as much as cold bothers me. I don't know what the deal is with that, but I definitely I'll go out and road. I did a road ride last week. I think it was like 105 when I was riding.
Woo.
And yeah, I mean, granted, if you're in the shade, it's good. You know what I mean? When you're in that like direct heat, like sun, then that's pretty rough. But
well, Macky raced Downeyville. What, it was like a week, 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago. It was like 103 degrees. So
it was.
We got a taste of that for sure.
Yeah. I think when that race was going on, I was riding just right up at Mills Peak, like the same weekend. And I remember it was like mid 70s at the top of the hill, but once you came down the hill, it was like you were riding into a blow dryer.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So you guys have been doing a lot of races then recently. It was like BTC Bike Race a couple of weeks ago. Downeyville. Can we talk about that, or is it like all spoilers for the channel?
I think we can talk about it. I mean, spoiler alert to anyone. Like, if you're gonna be mad about it, like, leave now, I guess.
First BTC Bike Race video drops Friday.
Yeah.
Oh, right on.
Patreon right now. So
subscribe, etc.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we can definitely talk about it. I feel like our videos are about more than just like the race results. So
yeah. So how did the BTC Bike Race go? Because last week I had a friend of mine on that was there, and it was kind of like the perspective of the regular rider, and I thought it would be really interesting to have you guys on right after, and like see what the perspective of the professional is.
Well, they probably mentioned that it was hot
because it was hot. That one already.
Yeah. Everybody definitely was talking about that a lot. So, what I know you guys have been changing up your training. Was it in general just like for your whole season, or was something like that race really like kind of dictating that change? Or
so yeah, I mean, I would say one of the big changes we made was doing more volume, which is kind of it's one of the big ways that you get faster on a bike. And I don't want people listening to this to take that and be like, I need to ride for 25 hours a week, because that may not be like the best next step for a lot of people. It was the next step for us because we were already doing a ton of quality training. So we were kind of at the point where like, what can we do better? We can do more of it. And I mean, that was both for just getting faster generally, specifically going uphill, but also like, very helpful for 7-day races for sure. I mean, I'll let Mackie talk in a second, but I'll just say that like the first time I did BTC Bike Race, it was in 2019, and it felt like I felt like I lived a lifetime in a week. It was so hard. I was so beat up, like so screwed up my body, got sick, yada, yada, yada. Like it felt so hard. And this year I was like, I think they've made it easier. Like this seems kind of easy. Like what am I doing? Like I need to go harder, you know? And I don't think they've made it easier. I think that was me mostly.
Yeah. The difference between Syd 2019 BC Bike Race and Syd 2023 BC Bike Race was significant, just in terms of fitness and ability to recover and sort of general like strength and stuff that allowed her to go hard for 7 days in a row without, you know, her knees flaring up and getting pissed like they did last time, and just all this stuff. It was really cool to see.
Yeah.
2019, that would have been before your injury, right?
It was the beginning. I would say like it was kind of the beginning of my injury. Like it was actually funny, sad, emotional. I don't know. I ran into the massage therapist that I had worked with when we did the race in 2019. And he was like, he'd started watching our videos and he was just like, I knew you were destroyed after that race. Like you were so broken. Like it's really amazing to see like you come back and like be fine. And I was like, whoa, okay, like other people were seeing this about to happen and I wasn't seeing it then at all. Like, I mean, it was just so normalized to be in pain for me at that point. Like it was so normal that I was like, okay, like it takes me 20 minutes to like bend my knees in the morning. Like that's fine. That's normal. That's
in case anyone's wondering, that's not normal. If you are in pain all the time, you should work with people so that that's not the case, because you don't need to be.
Yeah. How do you we're jumping all over the place here, but I mean, whatever. How do you get care like that? Because I mean, you go to a primary doctor, they're not like even me, I'm like, oh, I ride a lot of bike, and they're like, oh, okay, great. And then I'm like, no, you don't understand. I ride like 6 days a week. And they're like, oh, that's nice. And I'm like, no, but I want to understand like what that means for me and my body. And they're like, oh, you're in great shape for that. And I'm like, you know.
Unfortunately, you go to a specialist and pay more money.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really the short answer. Like, because Syd tried to do, you know, we had New Mexico health insurance at the time. And so like we tried to do stuff in New Mexico and like saw a bunch of different people. And
I did see a great PT in Taos, but it was hard to get anyone to like see the bigger picture.
They had sort of a protocol to follow, like, okay, for this kind of injury, which is what we thought Syd had, like we follow these steps.
And then when those steps kind of run out, they're like, see ya, you're better. And I'm like, but nothing's better. So I mean, we paid completely out of pocket for everything. Like we moved to Boulder essentially so that I could do PT 3 days a week with Dane Delozier at Revo. And he's just one of the best. And it was like $90 an appointment for 3 days a week for 9 months.
Yeah, that sounds fun.
So like really, really grateful to have been in a position where I could do that, which most people aren't. And that's what's like really, really sad about chronic pain in this country is most people don't have the ability to completely uproot their lives and pay a ridiculous amount of money to get better. And this got heavy all of a sudden. But
yeah. No, I mean, but it's the truth of the matter, you know, and like I think as cyclists, you know, in general, that I'm just going to be like real, like stereotypical, but like, I just don't think that the normal healthcare system doesn't always understand those injuries for like people that ride a lot and like how to actually like work with them to like make things better. You know what I mean? Like I had a rotator cuff injury, and they're like, you know, the things that they're asking me to do, I'm like, well, how does that affect me riding? Because I'm like in this position. They're like, they don't think about it in that same way. And I'm like, you're telling me that it's fine, I can ride bike, but I'm out riding for like 5 hours. You know what I mean? Like this doesn't make sense where you're like, yeah, don't lift anything too heavy though. I'm like, you know.
Yeah, they're imagining you're on a bike path, like only using your legs and like resting your upper body, and that's
I guess, you know.
At all. Yeah,
right. And even at that, I mean, like even on a road bike, it's like, dude, it's taxing, you know.
Yeah, totally. Well, and not only that, but even if you're not injured, being healthy and like being in good shape has a lot of the same markers as what was the example? I think we were listening to a Huberman Labs podcast, which is great, by the way, if you haven't checked it out. But he was saying that like if you talk to a doctor, a lot of the signs of being in really good shape are the same signs as about to go into cardiac arrest. Like there's like, you know, your pulse slows down and like blood flow, like there's all these things. And like
and also the signs of like having done really strenuous exercise. So like when we came back from Chile, so we did a 5-day stage race in Chile in March and then flew home the day afterwards. Don't recommend that, bad plan. But basically like my legs swelled up, like I had pitting edema in my legs. Like these are basically like signs of someone in like end stage cardiac disease, basically. But I was fine, you know. I was just like, this is what stage racing does to you. It's not really healthy, but like for your body to be able to deal with that actually is healthy in a way, if that makes sense.
Well, like, yeah, being able to recover from that is a good sign, but like, it's, you know, it's just tricky. It's like you were saying, it's really hard to find care that understands what performance is like, what, you know, trying to be a serious athlete is. And you kind of have to go outside the traditional medical system and find, you know, a good PT or a good coach, or, you know, you have to work with someone who's probably not going to be covered by your insurance, which sucks. But, you know, that's what you have to find. And, you know, actually Jay just commented, my insurance said they'd only cover PT to restore me to normal function, not previous athletic performance. And like that right there is the problem.
That's about the issue I would say that I was facing. We were able to get some of it covered with my spot accident insurance, which bless their hearts, it was a bit of a stretch, but I had a crash and we were like, maybe that caused it.
It definitely was it.
I mean, honestly, it was like anybody's guess at that point. We're like,
Well, there was like Syd had a crash and like felt something weird in her like abdomen. And that sort of lined up with what our PT Dane eventually decided is he's like, yeah, I think it was like the last straw.
Like
it
was like the last rubber band out of like the group of them, you know.
Exactly.
So definitely like get accident insurance.
Yes.
If you are mountain biking. It's like a lifesaver for sure.
What is that? It's like a secondary kind of.
So it's accident insurance, which means that it is not health insurance, but it covers out-of-pocket costs for anything that happens during an accident. So like if you trip and fall and break your arm and you go to the ER and you pay out of pocket or you pay your deductible, they'll reimburse you for that deductible because it was an accident. It doesn't cover, you know, illness or chronic things because those aren't accidents, but any kind of accident. Like I crashed and ended up fracturing my radial head and didn't realize it, but still like filled out the form because I was like, well, you know, and it turns out if you fracture your radial head and don't do anything about it, blood can pool there and swell because it's trying to heal it. And then it cuts off the blood flow to this tendon, and this tendon ended up rupturing. So I couldn't do a thumbs up. And so I had to get a full tendon repair where they take a tendon from here and attach it to your thumb instead. This tendon didn't exist basically. And they covered it because it was an accident. Like it was a crash that caused it. So
and ours is like, I think it's capped at 20,000 per incident. So it's you need other insurance too, right? If something catastrophic were to happen. But for like $25 a month, like we're able to have pretty high deductible plans and just like cross our fingers that if we get hurt, it's in an accident versus like illness or whatever.
Or if you get hurt, you're just like go out and run into a wall. You're like, no, it was an accident.
No, it was that. They're like, okay.
You just splice together some old footage. You'll never know.
And I think they works with IMBA now. Is that right? So if you're
and USA Cycling, I believe.
USA Cycling. Yep. So if you have a USA Cycling license or an IMBA membership with like your local trail advocacy group, you may be eligible to like get one of the plans.
Yeah, and it may be included. You should. Yeah, it's worth looking into because, accident insurance. It's a thing.
Yeah, the one I always think about is the helicopter one. That I know I've heard a lot of people talk about that one where it's like, I don't know what it is. Like, it's pretty cheap, like $70 a year or something like that. But it's like, if you get picked up out in the middle of the mountains, like it could be like $10,000 or something like that.
Totally. Yeah.
And the regular insurance won't cover that, So that's the one I always think about and we do a lot of, backcountry stuff here. And it's just like, that would suck,
Yeah.
Nobody wants to pay a bunch of money for like a helicopter ride, But then it's like this other thing where you feel like, are you going to get yourself into this position where you're paying for all these insurances and like, because there's bike insurance too. You can get, and so it's like, do you end up spending more because you're paying these monthly fees, or I don't know. That's the part where it gets to be a struggle, right?
Totally. Yeah, I mean, hopefully you just pay all these insurances, you never have to use them. That's really the goal.
Right, yeah. Don't use them. That's
just try to waste all of that money getting insurance.
So what do you do to prepare for a 7-day race like BC Bike Race, like at like a professional level?
I mean, we've kind of been working towards BTC Bike Race since November of last year. I mean, we had a bunch of races that we wanted to do well at and perform at, and so all of our training was kind of building for all of those events. But we knew that BC Bike Race was going to be a big one. It was in the middle of the season. We wanted to go into it really fit, really strong. And so that's kind of been the focus, is really improving our ability to go uphill faster, try to keep the descending skills fresh so that we were, either gaining time or not losing time to the people we were around. But really for both of us, because of the enduro background that we have, it was going up the hills faster. And it was a lot of work. We did a lot of riding this year. But I feel like it paid off. We both saw definite improvements. We definitely are climbing better than we ever have. But we also both want to climb faster still. So here we are.
I mean, to just give like the sort of basic overview from like October of last year, like we had done a full season. In October, we went and did testing at Revo, the same place that I did my recovery. So we did VO2 max testing, lactate, basically like trying to figure out like what do we need to target. For me, it was pretty clear, like VO2 max was pretty good. My threshold was not great, which makes sense if you've spent at that point have been like 18 months off the bike, and I had been back training for like 6 months. So
and just like high level explanation of that, VO2 max is like the cap of kind of the work that your body can do, and threshold is what it can do for an extended period of time.
Yeah.
The way our coach explained it is like VO2 is your roof and threshold is your ceiling. So if you have a really high roof, but your ceiling's really low, that doesn't, it's not that beneficial. You want your ceiling to be like up close to that top of the roof so that you're performing at that high level. And if they start getting close, then you need to increase the VO2 so that you can bump the threshold
So
up again.
when you're saying threshold, you're talking about FTP?
Basically.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
So functional threshold power or lactate threreshold, or those are all sort of
so functional threshold
concepts.
power is the power you can hold for an hour. And there are a variety of different ways to test that. Like that's what all those ramp tests are, or like a 20-minute power test. If you can do this for 20 minutes, put it through an equation, you can probably do this for an hour. A pure lactate test actually measures the lactate buildup in your blood.
Right.
Generally, lactate threshold and FTP are effectively the same thing. Like there's no real reason that they would be like radically different. There's also no real reason that anybody needs to know it down to like a single watt on every given day because it fluctuates all the time. But the testing that we did kind of gave us an idea of like, okay, like Macky has pretty high, what was your VO2? Like 69? Something
yeah,
like
I think it was 69.
Like pretty high roof, but also like very high threshold, like tons of training. Like we could try to push the roof higher. So starting in like November, December, he did quite a bit of VO2 max training.
Which are really short intervals. Very hard intervals, because you're basically getting your heart to work like as hard as it can for 1 minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes.
That's those are the ones that really suck on the trainer.
Yes,
those ones.
They do.
They suck outside too.
They suck no matter how you do them.
They suck everywhere.
And then for me, it was like pretty obvious. Like, okay, like VO2 is good, threshold pretty low. So I spent most of the winter doing like 20-minute intervals, essentially, just like working on threshold, doing time at a tempo pace, which is like a little bit below threshold. I think that was. Go ahead.
What was both of your FTPs when you guys started the training compared to like where you ended up at?
To be honest, we don't really track it. Like that's something that we upload our data, and Coach Mike like uses his stuff and basically like adjusts our numbers for our upcoming intervals if he needs to.
I think I tested mine at mine was tested at like 233. And like I think the thing is we were a little more focused on like basically your FTP is kind of a factor of like your watts to kilo. Like that's the watts part. How fast you actually go up the hill is the watts over kilo part. So we also made an effort to lean out a little bit, which helped a lot. I feel like I got a Training Peaks notification saying my FTP is like 245. So like it has gone up. It hasn't gone up a lot. I'm also like,
well, that's 10%.
Okay, it's gone up a bit. It's like 6 to 8 pounds lighter and like up 10 watts, give or take.
Yeah.
So that
which is good. Like honestly, like to make a change like that, it's not easy. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I never really had an understanding of watts before this winter, and I did Zwift for the first time, and it was quite an eye opener to me to like know like, oh, this is what Macky's like pushing on his training, and I'm like, what the fuck, dude? I couldn't even do that for 10 seconds. You know, like,
it's nuts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like, you know, I think you were like on that video in particular, you were like doing like 350 or something like that, and it was like, I mean, now I have some spots where it would like put me in that spot for a short amount of time, but when I first started, I just remember like 235 was like, this sucks, you know, and then, but I think that what it's really done though, is it kind of gave me a different measure to push myself with whenever I'm actually on the trail. Mm-hmm. And so in the past, I always have used a Garmin, but I would just, you know, as far as mountain biking went, I was just using a Garmin to like see how many miles and how much elevation I did. And then maybe on the road bike or the gravel bike, it would be like, oh, I know I want to stay around like 16 miles an hour or something like that, or 19 miles an hour. It's like, but I never really knew like how much effort I was actually putting in. So now on the gravel bike, which is mostly like almost a road ride where I'm at, is like, I can look down and easily be like, oh, I'm at, you know, 220 watts. Like I could push more, you know what I mean? or it's like, oh, I feel like I'm going, and then you look down and you're like, dude, you're at like 185. You're like just spinning your legs. Like it's maybe you're tired that day or something. There's a lot of things that really play into how you feel, but it definitely I've noticed that it really gives me a much better understanding of like, hey, I know I could be at 350 for X amount of time from doing that trainer. So when I'm on this long hill and I'm like telling myself that I'm at my max, and you can look down and see that number, it really changes things. Do you guys use like metrics like that while you're riding for your race?
Depends. I think we generally try to have that screen not on when racing. There are some races, if the start is like, depending on how the start is, that I might have it up, and I'll have like a note from Mike, our coach, in my race plan that's like, don't go over this number in the first half hour, and then you're like, ooh. And I always go over the number. Like, I think he puts in some buffer there, but like, yeah.
Mike, if you're listening, please put in some buffer, because it always goes over it.
So there was one recently where he was like, don't go over 290. And I'm like, oh Lord, if I go over 290, I'm going to explode. It was like really, like, he knew the course, and it was a really hard start. And like, I probably did go over 290,
But in general, I would say we don't use it, partially because we both have a lot of race experience. And when you have a lot of race experience, you're pretty in tune with like, okay, here's how hard I can go and for how long, without like looking at a number and seeing that.
Yeah.
That being said, there are times when, you're on a climb and you're like, I feel like I'm working really hard, and checking that and being like, yes, I am working really hard. This is not sustainable. I need to back it down a little bit, can be really helpful.
Yeah, I think the thing we want to avoid when racing is to like, artificially limit ourselves too much, to be like, because you never know what you're capable of in a race. And that's why I said, like, at the start, like, yeah, you do kind of want to do that, because like, you never know, but also like our coach has a reasonable idea of like what's going to be a bad idea. So, you pay attention to it a little bit then, but like in the back half of the race, if you're feeling good and those numbers are high, like it's better not to know,
Yeah.
Exactly. Like, oh, I just did, 10% over threshold for that last climb. Like, I'm going to blow up. Like,
then you'll get in your head or something like that. You might start backing off even more than you would. Yeah, it totally makes sense. How much are you guys riding during the week?
Recently
we have not ridden our bikes.
Very little, because we're recovering.
I think, this is such a funny one, because we get comments all the time from people that are like, I follow you on Strava and you don't ride that much, because they like, I don't know, also follow World Tour road racers and think everyone should be riding 30 hours a week. We did do we've done like a handful of weeks over 20 hours this year.
I think that was including gym work.
So 18 hours for like a big training week on the bike.
So would that be like 5 days that you're going out riding, or?
It's usually 6 to 7.
Yeah, it's usually 7, but maybe 2 of those are hour spins. Maybe no, I think 2
like
hour
easy
spins.
Endurance, kind of like just get out and move your legs. Those are the ones that I have to admit we have a bad habit of skipping.
Or we do them on the e-bikes, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's true.
There you go.
Yeah, and then like pretty much come like May, we just race so much that we don't really have a consistent like hourly. We did have we decided not to race for pretty much all of June, so that was good. We got to put in like 2 really big weeks, back it off for a week, drive to BC, ramp up a little bit right before the race, and then race.
I would say that it's hard to say this is how much we ride a week, because it really fluctuates. It depends on whether there's a race that weekend. It depends on if we're in a big training block. It depends where in the training block we are. And that's where having a schedule, in our case, working with a coach, but even, having a pre-built training plan can be really helpful, because instead of just constantly wondering, oh, should I be riding more? Should I be riding less? Blah, blah. it gives you some structure as to, okay, these days are going to be longer days and I need to be ready for that. And these days are, shorter days or days that I'm supposed to be off. And it allows you to get rid of the constant, in my case at least, like questioning of, oh, should I be doing more? Am I not doing enough? Instead, having like a plan, you're like, cool, I know what this plan is. I'm going to follow it. And yeah.
And it's really, really hard when it's hard and really, really easy when it's easy.
Yeah.
Basically just to like tell everyone what we've done in July. BTC Bike Race was July 3rd through 9th. We then immediately got in the car, drove 16 hours to Downeyville, Macky race Downeyville. I kept training through this period, so I was doing my intervals at 6 p.m. in 105 degree heat after he had raced to Downeyville. So that was the weekend after BCBR. Then we got in the car, drove 18 hours home, had like one day off, turned everything around, and did a 24-hour race in New Mexico this past weekend. Macky did not do that.
But I did follow each of the four people
we were
on the team for a lap.
Team.
So,
and when we finished that, like I haven't ridden my bike since Sunday when I did the last lap for that. Like it was just like, we have to shut it down. It's July. We're super tired. Like we have to. Last year we got COVID this exact week, and I actually like in some ways it was terrible. In other ways it was like really good timing because we really needed a break. And so this year we're taking the break, hopefully without the COVID.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Break and not the COVID.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, when you're taking the break off the bike, are you still going to the gym, or are you guys like, we're just chilling for like a week or whatever?
We have been doing the gym. I think that it's kind of nice because we really dropped, like we didn't do gym work the whole time we were on the road because we were just riding way too much.
Yeah.
Well, and it's hard if, finding a gym or, doing body, like it's hard to fit it in when you're also traveling.
Yeah.
So we kind of dropped the gym work then. And then now Mike's like, cool, we're going to get back into the gym work. We'll start with that while you guys are either off the bike or just ride if you feel like it for a weekish.
We have not felt like it.
We have not felt like it.
We're probably going to go to the bike park this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to go to the bike park.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing like how your training goes. Cause like I will have times where I ride 7 days a week and I have times where I don't. Usually it has to do with, either motivation or how busy I am with other shit. But I do notice that like when you were saying you're riding 7, you have 2 of them, one or two that are rest days. I usually have 2 days that are like, I'll go out and ride, but I'm definitely not putting any effort in. You know what I mean? It's like I'm just showing up to spin.
Yep.
And to me, I always just I'm just 100% basing off of like what my body feels like, and it's like, okay, well, we did a 4,000 foot ride or a 5,000 foot ride yesterday, and somehow maybe that next day I'll still go out and kill it on a 30-mile road ride, but the day after that, it's like I'm struggle busting it just to like go like 15 miles an hour,
Totally.
And that's like in my mind, I like try not to beat myself up over that day. It's just like, hey, I'm just out, I'm getting some cardio in and I'm moving for an hour and a half or whatever it is, and it is what it is. So
I would say like I think that's good actually what you're describing. I would say the major mistake that like uncoached athletes make is like having every ride be kind of like the same level of intensity. Whereas like for us, like when we're doing these big training weeks when we're not racing, it might look like we'll have 2 days a week where we have really hard intervals, so like
and gym work
usually gym work the same day, so like those are like really killer days. And then like 2 to 3 days, depending on where we are in the season, of like long, like 3 to 4 hour rides, but like
endurance kind of rides.
Yeah, but like we're not really going hard, It's for
so we know what our endurance ranges are as defined by Coach Mike, and what we try to do is when we're climbing, we try to be in that range. Like when you're pedaling, you try to be in that power range, and it's a big range. For me, it's like 220 to 350 or something. Like it's a huge range. So I just try to be in that range when I'm climbing. And then when you're descending, you don't worry about it. And it means that the average for the ride is going to be below. Like you're not going to be in that range for the average unless you went really hard on the climbs.
Twice as hard.
Yeah. And so that's how we do it. And that's how Coach Mike has us do it. Like he knows the ride average is not going to be in the endurance zone, but that's not the point. The point is to like be out there for 3-4 hours. And when you are climbing or pedaling, you're in that range. And otherwise, you're descending, you're working on your descending skills and just time on the bike.
Yeah.
And then any days that are left, I don't know how many days I said would be like an hour recovery ride or all the way off, kind of depending.
Yeah.
I think at the beginning of this year, you were doing one of Coach Mike's training plans. Is that correct?
No, I think it was.
I don't know. I was just doing.
Oh, you're doing a Zwift training plan. Yeah. How was that?
I went from a person that would talk all kinds of shit to anybody that said they were Zwifting to a person that's like a fucking believer. Like it totally changed my perception on the trainer rides now. And I always say that with like an asterisk, and the asterisk is if you don't have ERG mode, I think it's worthless. Like, because I don't think that there's anybody. I think the percentage of population out there that is actually going to push themselves as hard when they're in control of the dial as that machine will is low. You know what I mean? There's probably 5% of people that'll actually that would make themselves hate that bike that much, but not as much as that machine will when it's like, there is no remorse from that machine at all. It's like, like on a regular bike ride, you can, man, my chamois kind of out of place and get out of the saddle and adjust it. And on Zwift, it's like, oh, you want to two pedal strokes, you're going to take it easy. Guess what? It's ramping the power up and you're like, no, I'm just going to sit here and take it, and I didn't realize what training like that, how dramatically it could change what you're doing. So to kind of explain what I'm saying, before I started that training, I was riding between, let's just say 5 and 7 days a week. And I think that year or last fall, I actually was not even riding much gravel. I was just going out and mountain biking. So my easy days would be 1,500 feet of elevation, and my big days would be 5,000 or 5,500 feet of elevation. So, and maybe it would depend on, some days I would be pushing a lot harder than I would on others. Right. And maybe one of those days or 2 of those days I'm shuttling or something like that. So, but either way, I was riding a ton, and I started watching because my buddy that was getting ready to do BTC Bike Race was doing Zwift. And I'm in my mind, I'm like, dude, I'm riding 5-6 days a week, and he's just pulling away from me in his fitness level. And it was one of those things where, it's easy for me to be like, oh, I'm a big guy. That dude weighs 170 pounds. It's easier for him to, you know what I mean? And, but I knew that we had always kind of hey, he was always 5 minutes faster than me on this climb. And now he's 15 minutes faster than me on this climb. You know what I mean? There's no doubting it, whatever it is.
Something changed. Yep.
Yeah. And so it was because of watching how much his fitness changed, where it'd be I could see him pull away from me on a climb before, but now he's out of the saddle and just hammering up this hill. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? So I decided to give it a shot. And man, that is definitely, like I said, it just gave me a whole new perspective for that type of training in so many different ways. I didn't know that you could put that much hurting on your legs in an hour. You know what I mean? To get off of a ride on those days when Zwift's a complete asshole, to get off of the bike and feel my legs are destroyed I did 4 hours in the mountains,
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
And this is why I laugh when people are like, why aren't you riding for 30 hours a week? I'm like, oh, we could kill you in an hour.
Yeah.
crush you. I feel like it was like last year at some point in the summer, the weather, it was like really stormy. And so we texted Mike, we're like, hey, like, we have a 3-hour ride on the schedule. Like, we're going to get caught between thunderstorms. Like, can you give us something that's like an hour? Biggest regret of my life. That was our hardest workout of the year by far. I think he was like, yeah, sure. Do like 2 by 10 minute max effort, or 2 by
1 minute,
10
2 by
10 by 2 minute max efforts. Oh,
it was so hard.
Can you explain what that is for people that don't know what a 2 by 10 is?
Go as hard as you can for 2 minutes.
10 times.
Take a 2-minute break. And then do it again 10 times in a row.
Oh, that sounds awful.
Savage.
It was. Yeah. It was very hard.
So yeah, quality over quantity.
Yep.
Always. I mean, don't go do that every day. That's not good training either. But
yeah. But I mean, it sounds like that's what you experienced. Is you started doing some of these structured rides, and they were shorter, but it meant you didn't have to go and be out on the bike for 4 hours to get this training benefit. And that's really the key with any kind of training plan. Zwift has them, Trainer Road has them, Training Peaks has them. There's pre-built ones, like Coach Mike has a set of them, or just working with a coach one-on-one like we do. Like, they give you that structure so that you get these benefits without just trying to go and ride for 4 or 5 hours every day, because that's a lot of time commitment. Like, even as professional mountain bike racers, 4 to 5 hours a day would be a lot of time to commit to being on a bike. Like, I like my bike.
Yeah.
Not that much.
Yeah. I felt like it also did it, like, it made when you're on your bike, like, a little more special to me again. Like instead of, when you're just spending time, let's just call them like training rides, where you're just out there, like, it's not as exciting as whenever you're like, dude, this is super fun, we're having a good time. You know what I mean? So if you were doing it on the trainer, and I just remember thinking, like, I can't wait to be on the actual trail, because it's not going to suck this much.
Totally.
So, but also, like, when you ride that much as well, it gets monotonous. You start to, like, you've ridden your closest trail system so many times that it's like, it's almost not even fun to ride. You know what I mean?
For sure.
So it's hard to imagine, as, like, because I remember at a point in my life where I rode once a week, and I couldn't imagine, like, in my mind it would be like a dream come true to ride every day, and then you do it for a while and you're like, well, I need to come up with something else, because
there is more,
otherwise I'm gonna end up quitting
than riding bicycles. Yep.
Yeah. So you guys also, I would assume, changed your diet up getting ready for that race as well, because I think you said you lost some weight. So what kind of changes did you make? Because from watching your channel, you guys eat pretty clean as it is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think endurance sports are so funny. Like, I just want to, like, run some disclaimers real quick, because like, neither of us thought we were fat. Like, we didn't need to be on a diet for health reasons. Like, we ate really, really well. Unfortunately, we are just in a sport where watts to kilo matters a lot.
Basically, the lighter you are and the more power you can put out, the faster you go up a hill.
Right. Yeah. And we're both, like, again, disclaimer, on the bigger side for XC mountain bike athletes. Most of that, I think, is from racing enduro, like a lot of focus on gym training. Like, you just have more muscularity, like, especially on the guys' side. Like, some of the men just have no upper body at all.
Biceps the size of my wrist.
Yeah, Mackie's not.
Let's just put it that way.
Not body shame anyone.
No, we're not. No, not that's like, they go uphill faster than I do.
But that's, like, neither of us kind of wanted to go there exactly. So if you don't want to lose muscle, you have to lose fat, which requires being a little bit more analytical about your diet. Mm-hmm. I would say we worked with a dietitian. Her name's Dina. She's on Instagram as a nutrition mechanic. She's amazing, like, super level-headed. Like, we just tracked everything we ate, and she kind of gave us some suggestions from there.
We both went into it with the goal of we want to continue to have a healthy relationship with food.
Yeah.
We don't want to be constantly thinking about what we're eating. We don't want to exclude anything from our diet. We just want to like optimize and efficientize what we're doing. And so most of it was small tweaks. Like instead of whole fat yogurt, you get fat-free or low-fat yogurt. And like, as long as you don't mind the taste difference, and neither of us did, because we get the like Chobani, like it's so rich even in the low-fat version that like it's fine.
Yeah.
But like
that is a food group for us, so switching this one thing made a big difference.
But like little changes like that is what we were going for and what she was able to recommend for us. And then the big one for me was I was very hesitant to work with a dietitian. I was terrified to, frankly, because I was afraid of being told you need to eat less and be hungry, because I hate being hungry and I hate when Syd is hungry because she gets hangry, and that's bad, as do I. So we were like, we want to do this in like a really reasonable way so that we are not hangry. We're not like constantly thinking about food. And what she sort of explained, which was really helpful for me and kind of mind blowing, was it's not that you need to like eat less food. It's that you need to be more conscious of the calorie density of the food that you're eating, depending on what you're doing that day. And so a lot of it was just simple things like, I love pasta. Love me some pasta. Pasta is very calorically dense. So days when you're doing a 3-hour ride, that's great. You should be eating pasta because you just burned a ton of calories on a 3-hour ride. But days when you're doing an hour spin, you probably don't need to eat pasta because that's more calories than you need. And so instead, if you do something like barley or farro or one of these whole grains, they're much lower or much less calorically dense. So you still feel just as full, which is awesome. Like I still eat a big old bowl of, whatever it is, and I feel full and I feel good, but I actually consumed fewer calories because it was farro instead of pasta.
Yeah. There's a ton of stuff out there that's like, it's cauliflower and not rice, or something like that, So
and it definitely, like, I was hesitant about tracking food for all the reasons we've said, but it ended up being very, very helpful for us. I think basically what I realized is I had kind of been existing in a state of like very high energy flux and like not adjusting my caloric intake to keep up with that. So what would kind of happen is like we'd do a big ride. I would eat what I normally ate and be running like a 1,200 calorie deficit. This is what we discovered when we started tracking things. And then like the next day I would just be like a ravenous bitch, like just shoving everything in my mouth, like being mean to Macky, like just, and like no real thought to like what I was eating, like. And basically what we did is what we've tried to do is like even that up a little bit of like, okay, let's get these really calorie dense things in like shortly after the workout, because that's actually when you benefit the most from, like, you benefit much more from like replenishing those calories before you go to sleep and recover than from like eating 3 bags of potato chips the next day. Like, and then like this weird thing started happening, which I was like a little sad about. Like it used to be like after every race, I could like just eat the entire next day.
We'd have the recovery day hungries.
Right. Where you're just like, just
whatever you see,
so
you would
much.
eat.
And we changed the way we were fueling with like just eating so much more during the race and during the hard workouts and afterwards, that then it's like, oh, like I'm just a totally normal person on a recovery day. Like, you don't get to eat whatever I want. It's like a little sad, but like
because
also,
you don't want to eat a pizza the day after, like an entire pizza to yourself.
But it also means you're not like obsessed with food, and that I think is good.
Well, what we figured out was happening with Syd, like she was saying, this calorie flux, is she was eating about the same amount every day and wildly different amounts of calories burned. So it was evening out. Like she was maintaining her weight,
not gaining weight,
but she was grumpy, not grumpy, like, and that was
probably not getting like the full benefit of the training because I was under eating on the training days. We learned a lot with that. and like you said, like I thought we were eating pretty good, and we were, I hate to use the word good because it's not really
Yeah.
The way
yeah,
I try to look at it is like what's healthy in any given moment is like what is serving your goal for that moment.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
but I mean, I see the way that you guys cook and stuff like that on your channel. So it's not Chef Boyardee and like Hamburger Helper. You know what I mean? So you're definitely like eating a fresh diet, you know, of things that are lots of vegetables and things of that nature. And like when I look at like the plates, they're not like, hey, this is like 75% of the plate is protein and the other part, you know what I mean? So it's apparent that you guys like, it's not like you were eating bad, you know, and maybe, you have those days. And I can relate with what you were saying, like the up and down though. And but yeah, it's interesting whenever you start really paying attention to what your body's actually asking for, because realistically the reason you're ravenous and hungry the next day is because your body's like, hey, like I ate all of the reserves, you need to like fill that tank back up.
Right.
But mentally your brain is just like, well, I'm gonna do that with fucking potato chips because this is fun. You know?
Exactly. Well, so one thing that I also thought was really helpful that we learned from Dina is the way she put it is there's no bad food.
Yeah.
There's just a bad time to eat certain foods.
Yeah.
Like there's nothing wrong with potato chips. If you're doing a stage race, potato chips.
Several bags of potato chips during BTC Bike Race because we were just like salt. One day I made a salt sandwich. Like it was literally just like salami, potato chips, like 2 different kinds of pickles and like cheese. Avocado. There was some avocado on there. There was a green thing, but it was like literally just like get me salt because I just like, you know, we were finishing every day with like our kits were just like white, white lines everywhere, you know? So like, that was a really good food at that moment.
And so that's the key is like, we try to never talk about like, oh, we eat good or don't eat good, whatever, because there's no, like all food is good. There's just good times to eat it and bad times to eat it. And like, if you're eating potato chips continuously, you're never going to get very full and you're consuming a ton of calories. And like,
and thus you're missing out on like micronutrients and all, you know, the good stuff that's in vegetables and the things that we don't eat during a stage race. Like Mike actually usually tells us, he's like, don't eat raw vegetables.
No salads this week. You're racing.
No salad.
What's your favorite splurge food?
I don't know. I mean, we pretty much eat what we want when we want to, for the most part. I think like,
I would say really good post-race foods, pizza, burritos, because you're getting high calorie per quantity foods. And that's the time when like you need to consume as many calories as you can as efficiently as possible. That's a great time for like, you're saying like Hamburger Helper, those like any kind of processed food that's really calorically dense. That's a great time to eat that because it's going to help you get those calories in without like your stomach capacity is only so much. You need as many calories as you can get in that stomach capacity. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, because I thought of it, is we talked about tracking food, and we did do that when we started working with Dina, but we didn't continue doing that because we knew that for both of us, it could kind of become this game of like, oh, well, you know, I burned this many calories and I only ate this many. And like, you know, we didn't want to have that constantly like calculating relationship. So we tracked it for a couple of weeks until we sort of figured out like, here's what eating this amount of food feels like or looks like. And then we stopped tracking it, and we've basically held pretty steady weight since we stopped doing that, like at about the level that we wanted to be at.
And we might do like another period of tracking, like again in the off season, just to kind of like check in of like, you know, I think
because you'll let some things slip. I know whenever I've counted in the past, like I've done it enough times that generally I know what I'm supposed to eat when I'm eating. You know what I mean? And the other end of it is also like, you also have to know, you can't have that number. Like some people, when you tell them, I always use the 10 pound or 10 calories per pound. So like as a baseline. So, you know, if you're 200 pounds, then you can eat 2000 calories. But if you go out and you burn 3,500 calories that day, you should not be eating 2,000 calories that day. You know, and that's the part that's really hard for me to like, because I'm not a dietitian, to express to people where I'm like, I just do what my body says at that point. You know, and it's like, but not be ridiculous. It's like, okay, I'm not going to try to eat 2 pizzas, but I'm also not going to be like, oh, I can only have 2 slices because that's 600 calories, you know, like.
Totally. And especially, like you said, as you get to know your hunger cues, as you get a better idea of like, how many calories are you actually burning? And that's something, I don't know if you've noticed this, but power meters are amazing because they give you an accurate calorie count that does not necessarily line up with your heart rate monitor.
Heart rate, calorie counts. We got Whoops recently. They're wildly off compared to the power meter.
We don't use those for calorie numbers because like those tend to be like almost all heart rate based calorie counters are overestimating your burn.
They can go either way, actually. I think it depends, but they can
basically they're inaccurate.
I think they can be off like up to 20%, which is like a lot for something like this, whereas like a power meter calculation is usually within like 5%.
And the thing is,
I'll have to look at that because I have a power meter on the new bike that I built and my gravel bike, and I don't actually look at that data any differently because I just look at it in my Garmin, which I'm assuming is like making it off of my heart rate monitor.
Generally, if it has power, it'll usually base it off of
like
power.
Strava will grab it from power if it's reading power.
Yeah,
and that's how I know it's like wildly off, because like when I ride my e-bike that doesn't have a power meter, it'll be like, you burn 700 calories, and I'm like, nah, I know what that feels like. That was not that.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, there's, like I was saying earlier about the Zwift, it definitely I'm slowly, like as I'm building new bikes or you know buying something new, I'm putting a power meter in all of them, just so like I was really blown away by how much it really changes the way that I actually ride when I'm on the trail. And initially I just thought I would just use it on the road bike, you know, and then next thing you know, I'm like, well, how many watts am I pushing up that climb? You know, because it feels like this, you know, and
well, when you look at it on like mountain bike rides, it's very like ding, 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 ding. Like on a road ride, it can just be like a consistent power the whole time. But on mountain bikes, there's every little punchy thing. It goes up and then it goes back down and it goes up again. Like it's very,
you'll see like huge spikes. Like, I just hit like 700 watts. You know, you're like,
2 seconds.
I feel awesome.
And that's why it's so funny. Like we'll get the occasional comment of someone who'd be like, you should really do your intervals on the trainer or on the road because like that's how you get consistent power output. And it's like, yeah, that's true. But like, that's not what we do in a race. Like when we're in a race, we do 700 watts for 2 seconds and then like back it back down. So we do some of our training on actual trails, basically just for
some of our intervals. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just because it's hard. Like, and then what you do is you try to shoot for the average of the interval to be within your range. And sometimes it's above and sometimes it's below, but you make sure you have that average up there so that you can make sure that you're hitting the average. Okay, so sometimes it's high and sometimes it's low, but overall, if you can get your average in the range, and it's a very different feeling, like doing it on the trainer or like with erg mode, especially where it's just like, it's going to make you do the correct amount, is different than doing it on like a nice paved road climb where like you have to control it, is different than doing it on a mountain bike trail where it's like, there's some up and down and you're like constantly trying to juggle to stay in that range. It's worth doing all of them.
Because I was wondering how you would do that.
Yeah,
because I mean, you could go from 300 watts to 180, like or like 80 watts because you're like going downhill and there's like, you know, or something like that. And like
we do try to avoid downhills in our intervals. I get so mad when there's a little downhill and I lose like 10 watts on that average, and then you have to gain it all back on like the next climb. Oh, I don't mean that.
Sid finishes these intervals sometimes and she's so mad about this one section. I'm like,
yeah, you gotta bring it back into
perspective.
It's okay.
Perspective.
So like how long are your intervals then? Like when you're actually on a mountain bike trail, is it like, you know, like a 10-minute push up some hill or something like that, and then you just try to plan your route?
those were
like
18-minuters, I
15
think.
or 18-minute ones.
Yeah. We have some big hills around here.
So.
Yeah. As do we out here. It's I just wasn't sure like what that looked like on the trainer. So what was BC Bike Race like for you this time around compared to, I mean, at this point it's been a few years. So Syd, you had like a huge kind of transformation, it sounds like.
Yeah, it was much better.
It was hot.
Yeah, it was totally different conditions. Like it was wet and rainy and foggy. Like looking at our footage from 2019 was just like looks like a totally different world. And this time it was just hot and dry and dusty, and I'm just like sweating all over my camera lens like the entire I'm so mad. Half of our footage has like sweat droplets on it. It's terrible.
That sucks when it happens. These are YouTube problems, but I totally feel you there.
Yep.
But I don't know, it was just this was the first time, well, this year has been the first time that I felt like I was like really racing stage races, like really going, and like each day is a race. And you're not really worried about the next day because like you can race for 7 days in a row.
And that's in contrast to what?
In contrast to like, are we gonna survive tomorrow, or like how big of a hole am I gonna dig over the course of this week?
Because last time we did it, so last time we raced it as a co-ed duo, so we were racing together. So I was not going my race pace during that race. Like I was there. Chilling is not the right word, but like I was there to support Syd, to help her go as fast as possible.
Right.
And so it was a big week for me regardless, but it was a much bigger week for Syd because she was going race pace for 7 days in a row. And we finished and like basically didn't ride for, I feel like you didn't ride for like 3 or 4 weeks.
It wasn't that long.
Not quite.
I raced Downeyville 3 weeks later and I was not recovered for that. Yeah. So that gives you some idea. It's hard. I think I was like fairly fast in 2019 and I had this ability to go fast. I just didn't have the like training to back it up. So I just was breaking my body down over and over again. And I think I think a lot of people do stage races like that. Like you definitely go to these stage races and you see people like limping around and all bandaged up and like the KT tape all over like half their body. But it is much nicer to do it the way we did it this year, where like it really was like day 5 or 6. I'm like, oh, wow, how is it day 6 already? Like this has gone really fast. Like I feel totally fine. I think I might have left a little too much in the reserves, but mostly that was because of the heat. I just like didn't know how my body was going to react to the heat. I historically have not been great at heat, so I was pretty conservative the like first couple days.
But it paid off because you had great later days.
Yeah.
Like Syd had really fast last 3 days. So.
Yeah.
Why didn't you race Downeyville afterwards?
Well, it was 5 days after BC Bike Race. And I think because of my 2019 experience, I was kind of like, there's no way. And honestly, I think like I definitely could have done it this year, but I'm not sure I would have enjoyed it. Like it would have been a little tight turnaround.
And it worked out well because there's so many logistics around Downeyville. Like if you want to pre-ride, there's the shuttle.
There's so much driving.
So Syd was able to deal with those logistics so that I could focus on racing, which I really appreciated. And then the next weekend at the 24-hour race, I was support crew so that she could focus on racing. So it was a good balance. We were able to get
even more videos, though now we're very behind.
Yeah, we're very behind.
But I still like, you'll love this because you've been to Downeyville, but the morning of the XC race, they shut the road to Packer Saddle, like at where it becomes one lane. And they didn't tell anyone they were going to do that. So Macky was depending on me to like have a bottle at the top. So I had to like power hike like all the way up that road. Like my calves were more sore from that than anything at BC Bike Race. Like, I was wrecked.
Yeah, Syd was definitely, she was more sore than I was. And I had raced the cross country.
I was so mad though, because I was like looking at my watch and it was like, if it becomes 10 o'clock, like I'm going to have to start running up this road because I know how fast he's going to get up this hill. Like, And luckily some course marshal and a pickup truck picked me up and drove me to the top. Otherwise, I don't know if I would have made it. It was
so does the XC race go up that main paved road the way that the shuttle trucks drive?
No,
So
that's how I was going up.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying.
Station.
It goes up the fire road from 49 up that way, right?
From Sierra City.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, so I was going up this way, and she drove, and then was gonna,
and then was like sprinting up the hill. It was really funny because I was with all these other people who were like, "Oh, we have plenty of time." I was like, "I don't have plenty of time, so I will like see you all later." And they're like, "He won't do it in an hour," and I'm like, "He will do it in an hour," and he did it in like 55 minutes. So it was a good thing I got up there.
Isn't it crazy that you can spend so much time and your body can be so efficient at riding a bike, and then like just this minute muscle change of like walking compared to cycling, and you're like floored. I wanted to get back into running like a year ago or something like that, and I started running again. I remember one of my first runs, it was like I was so sore I couldn't even sit on the toilet, you know, but it was like, but I can go out and ride like I don't know, 35 miles and 6,000 feet of elevation, but I can't run like 3 miles, you know? It's like,
Totally. Yeah, they had a Le Mans start at this 24-hour race we did last weekend, and I had volunteered to do the first lap because I'm usually like a pretty good starter, but I thought it was like in the past at this race, they had done a mass start like on your bikes, but they did a Le Mans start, which is where you like ditch your bike and then walk back to the start and run like, I don't know.
It was kind of a long
way.
Yeah, it was like probably like
a minute and a half of running, give or take. I don't know.
It was at least 400 meters. Oops,
so a minute and a half for me. I'm not fast these days. That was hilarious because I was more sore from that than like the next 7 hours of riding my bike. And I also like got on the bike and was like, okay, I can do 300 watts at a start for like a minute and a half and like bring it down and still go hard. I cannot run for a minute and a half and then like get on the bike and still go hard. I was just like soft pedaling after I like got on the bike, like was one of the first people on the bike, and then I was like, don't train for this.
I think it's one of the benefits of doing the gym work though, because we are forced to do movements that we don't like. They translate to the bike, but like
but nothing prepares you for running, running in carbon-soled shoes for 400 meters.
No, like, running's terrible.
I would have brought other shoes if I had known.
But I was just thinking of like Dane, our PT, often has pull-ups in our gym work for me. And like, there are components that translate, you know, the pulling down, it's a lat movement. The pulling on a bicycle to like go up something, like it's a lat movement. So that it translates, but they're just different enough that like I do pull-ups and the next day I'm like,
are you sore from yesterday's pull-ups? Is that
actually surprisingly not? Okay, I know, which is good. But normally just those different movements, like I'm usually sore. And so doing the gym work consistently this year, I think has helped a lot just in terms of like general ability to move around in life and not be as sore.
Yeah. It's interesting how the gym work like changes things. I know whenever I first decided that I wanted to lose weight, I think right around last time we were on the podcast, and I was doing a lot of gym work. And then when I had that rotator cuff issue, it just like, make a long story short, it got me out of going to the gym, and I just started like riding. And lately I've been really trying to figure out how to get the gym work back in, because there was a point in time where let's say I weighed 10 pounds more and was actually skinnier, like because of the muscle mass that I had instead, you know, and you could tell that difference in like the way that you could throw the bike around, or like you didn't maybe feel as sore in your core on a big ride day because of that gym work. So it's definitely it has its value. It's just, you know, it's like with anything in life, you just have to put it in your routine, and then once you have your routine, then it's really it becomes not hard, you know. Like when I tell people, oh, I'm riding 5 or 6 days a week, and they're like, how do you do that? And it's like, well, I just am deciding to do that instead of something else that I was doing, which who knows what that something else was, but yeah. And once you do it for a while, then you start feeling weird when you don't, you're like, so.
And I think that's part of why I think Mike is having us get back into the gym work, is it's kind of a like, okay, you have not been riding, like you haven't been training regularly, because when you're racing, you're not training. Like, sure, racing will get you into shape, but like you're not doing your usual, like, okay, these days are interval days, these days are long days if you're racing, because you're racing. And so we kind of got out of the ritual of these days are the days that we do that. And so I think part of it is just a momentum aspect, is like you have to just get back in that routine. And so Mike was like, this week, I don't care if you guys get on the bike, but you have to get back in the gym. And I think it was his nice way of telling us to start getting that routine back in place so that we can get back into the training.
Yeah, definitely. The routine is good. Definitely. It's funny though. It's like hard to get it to be a routine, and then it's also so easy to let it go. Like you take that week off, and that next week is like, it takes some serious mental fortitude to get yourself back in place there again.
Totally.
Changing gears a little bit though. Last time we talked, you guys didn't have 2 channels, so you guys started the Syd Fixes Bikes channel, and that thing has done really well. Was that like, you guys are still making content for that here and there?
Yeah.
Here and
there is the operative word for sure. Yeah.
Well, I think really it was Syd's way when she was injured of doing something bicycle related that would be beneficial to her in the long run. And she was like, I can't ride, I can't train, I can learn how to work on my bicycle. And it was also an opportunity for us to take all the things we had learned about YouTube that maybe the best way to put it is that we weren't willing to do on the Syd Macky channel, which is like, the videos are all sort of the same formula. There's an intro, they're all in the same location. There's all these components that we're like, our Syd Macky channel, it's too much about our lives and like what we're doing to have that consistency. And so instead, we're going to try to do all these things that we've learned, do them right on this other channel, and see what happens. And it turns out,
basically, we were kind of like, can we get to 100,000 subscribers in a year if we actually because I feel like we had this sort of story that we told ourselves, which is that we know how to do YouTube. We're just choosing to do it wrong because we want to do it our way.
Yeah.
So then we're like, could we get to 100,000 subscribers if we actually do it right? And the answer was yes.
Yep.
So what was it that you did differently?
It was just really, really consistent, like super consistent branding that we planned out in advance of like, we're going to be at this point, we were in the workshop that we built on Macky's parents' property. So we're in the shed. I'm going to be wearing the same apron. I'm going to have my hair done the same way. We're going to do the intro exactly the same way. We're going to tell people exactly what we're doing in the first 30 seconds of every video. That's going to match the title, which is going to match the thumbnail. And then all that boring shit that we refuse to do for our other channel.
Right.
It was more that that channel lent itself to that kind of formula, because the whole thing is, here's a task. We're going to go through the task. I'm going to be behind the camera explaining the task, and Syd's going to be doing the task. And so we were able to duplicate that with changing a flat tire and bleeding brakes and installing you can do that. Whereas on our, on the Syd Macky channel, it's more of a story than it is a formula. And so we kind of
depend on people to invest and watch more than one video, which I think is the really hard ask with YouTube, with our vlogging channel or whatever you want to call it, is that if you pop in and you watch one video, it might be the 4th day of BTC Bike Race or something, and you're going to be like, what's going on? We try to introduce ourselves, we try to do that, but ultimately, we do want people to invest a little bit more. something like a how-to channel is just so much easier in the sense of like, you can make every video formulaic enough that if like no matter what video YouTube decides to send out, you're hitting people that want to subscribe. And I think that's a hard thing with our channel is like, every once in a while, the algorithm will be like, how about this one? And we're like, really? That's the one you're going to send out? Like, that's not the one we want everyone to see. Like,
right.
Whereas with the Syd Fixes Bikes channel, it really was like any single one of these that does well will be representative of everything else we're doing.
So when people see a video, if they then go to the channel, every other video is the same style. And I think that was what was, that's what made it grow as quickly as it did. And it was really fun to see that. And
we also did shorts pretty early.
That's true.
Which helped. Like we did one of the first like YouTube shorts we posted got like 28 million views, which is the comment section is the biggest cesspool I would have ever had on a channel. I'm just like, I can't even, like, you don't want to get 28 million views on your videos. Like, we all sort of think we want that, but we do not.
Yeah.
I know I don't want that. I like 30 to 60,000. That's perfect. It goes over 60,000 and you just get people that you're like, why are you here?
Yeah.
Please leave.
We don't want you here. You can leave now. Here's the door.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's for sure. Yeah, it's I've been listening to this it's a YouTube channel and a podcast. It's called The Editing Podcast. Okay. And it's the editor from Logan Paul's editor. And so he knows how to, like, I think he says something like he has like 8 billion views or something like that on videos that he's edited. So like it's him and some other people, and then they'll bring in people from that have edited different things like Andor for the Star Wars series and stuff like that, Cool. And so it's really interesting, at least from an editor's perspective, which, I guess we are, and, but there's some things that they talk about where it's like, that formula, like you said, is the formula for YouTube, but I don't know if it's necessarily always the formula for the mountain bike content that we do, and it's really hard for them, I think, for them to understand that, where it's like, no, somebody will watch 3 minutes of this trail that doesn't have any After Effects or this or that or whatever
music
going on
in the background.
Because they're just interested in actually seeing what the trail looks like, and to them they would be like, this cuts too long, you didn't do this, you're gonna lose your retention and blah blah blah. And it's been interesting though. I've definitely learned a lot from it, and it's made me want to come up with ways to be a better, let's say, filmmaker than just like a content creator. And I think that's where you see some channels, like when they figure out how to like do the mountain biking story and the content, like the filmmaker section, like Seth does a really good job. Like he's got like the B-roll and he's got, a couple different angles, but he also doesn't like go out and do like as many trail rides. So it's a lot harder to get that footage when you're by yourself, or whatever. So,
well, and that's the thing is Seth, I feel like in the mountain bike YouTube space, there are a number of different sort of types. And there's what Seth does, where he started off with the bike hacks, and his stuff is all generally in a single location. And, he's gone out more, especially as he has the Burn Peak, like he now has a location, but it's all generally at that location or in his shop or whatever. And then Brian, I feel like, was kind of the first. Brian and Alex were kind of the first to like do it more about trails and about like this ride as a
but also
video.
Kind of like talking people through it and like the personality coming through for sure.
And then you have like BC POV or you guys or like my content's like similar, where it's kind of a hybrid,
Yep. Yeah, it's been interesting to see how different people have done different things. And
I feel like we definitely started having more fun and enjoying YouTube more, and also like not necessarily getting success in terms of like huge amounts of subscribers or views, but like definitely growing on Patreon and like feeling like we were growing our community when we kind of stepped away from like what we were seeing as established genres. Like I think when we first started YouTube, we were kind of like, I don't know, like scattershot, like, oh, we'll just film this one ride we did and like kind of try to be BKXC, but like Brian already is that. Like he's got that
he does
unlocked,
it really
you know,
well.
and like we're not that. You know, or we do a like, here's how to like set up a tubeless tire kind of video.
Which is like Seth, but he's already does that really well.
Yeah. And then when we were like, oh wait, like we race bikes professionally, like maybe that's what we should talk about. And we're like, maybe we can like tell stories about bike racing, that we were like, oh, this actually is fun. And like, but it is kind of like, I feel like we had to sort of, I don't know, make our own way a little bit with that, because nobody was doing that kind of content exactly when we started doing it. And it's definitely taken a lot of refinement. Like we were just looking at some of our BCBR videos from 2019. I'm like, oh, these are terrible.
There were aspects that were like, ooh, that was good. We did that good.
Like
and then,
a little occasional diamond in the rough.
And then we were like, wow, nobody knows.
Why did I put music in there?
Yeah.
Like, what was I thinking?
Or like nobody knows who we are because there's no intro. We're just like, you've been watching the channel forever. So like anyone new is like, the hell are these people? Like,
yeah. I think, you know, the thing about YouTube that's different is that everybody's learning when they start. Like not many, there's not a lot of people out there that get into YouTube that have like, oh, I went to film school. You know, like I know what I'm doing. Like none of us knew how to work a camera or how to like tell a story or how to edit or any of these things. And so you kind of learn along the way. I mean, I know definitely I've done a lot of the same kind of things that you guys have talked about. Like you try what other people are doing successfully, and then you figure out whether or not that actually works for your personality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think you eventually you start to build your own style, you know, and then you like experiment here and there and you see what sticks. And I think what you said a few minutes ago, though, it actually like resonated with me when you said how many people you have on Patreon, because I think that is something that I've always like really used as a barometer of like how well I'm doing. Because if you have a lot of support on Patreon, then that means like out of the whatever thousands of people that you have following, like this many people believe in you enough to like pay you like out of their own pocket. Like that's
kind of insane.
Yeah. You know what I mean? It's like on one hand, it's crazy. And then on the other hand, you're like, well, that makes sense. You know, like,
well, like, even just the fact that they have to go from YouTube to Patreon, like that transition right there. Like anytime we try to get somebody like we try to say, hey, go check out the link in the description or like, go do this thing. The second it's not like right there, that's like instantaneous, they can do it. There's like a 100%, not 100%.
99.5%.
Yeah, 99.5% drop off. Like most people are just going to be like, nope, I'd rather just watch another video, which I totally get. But I
had a brand that was like asking me to do something with them, and the way that they wanted it was like, oh, like we'll pay you if we get this many like followers or whatever. And it was like, no, that's not how it works, because you know how hard it is to get somebody to do that. Like it's not just like, hey, I'm going to make this post and you're going to get 10,000 followers. You know, it's like, no, dude, you know? So it's
summary,
definitely...
thank you to everybody on Patreon from us and 100%. From Robert as well. Like we really appreciate that.
And it really is. It's like, it's such a better way to fund a channel than AdSense or anything like that. Like we also have a lot of amazing sponsors that we're super grateful for, but Patreon is different. Like we actually feel like we know people, and like whenever we meet our patrons, we're like, oh, this actually does make sense because we're like now best friends.
Yeah,
like
we want to be friends with you in real life. also, which is cool.
Yeah.
Like we feel like we're getting the right people to Patreon, because when we meet them in real life, we're like, cool, we would actually be like, we're actually friends in real life.
Yeah. I've been trying to brainstorm of ways to like level up what I'm doing on Patreon. I feel like I had a good plan for the time whenever I started it, and I need to like reevaluate right now, where it's like, okay, like what am I actually doing, or what is bringing value? It's interesting because like you would think, oh, extra content, like that's what people want. They watch content. So I make content that's not on YouTube for Patreon. And let's just say there's, 200 people there. 5 people will watch it. So you're like, yep. Well, then maybe they don't want content. Like, what do they want?
Yeah.
Or does it even matter? Or like recently, Seth sent out an email saying that he was canceling his because they funded Berm Park. They did what they wanted to do. And like, that's that. And I had like responded back to him where it's like, dude, I'm just here to like contribute to whatever it is that you're doing. So if you just let this money pile up in a bank account for 3 years until you figure out what you're doing with it, or at that point you're just like, hey, I'm going to give it all in, but whatever the hell you're going to do.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to like help support whatever your idea is. And I think that there's a lot of people on Patreon in general that's actually what they're there for, that they don't really care about the sticker pack or the, whatever it is.
Well, and I'd be curious because I know a number of the people in the chat are people who are on Patreon. I would be curious to hear what people have to say, why it is that they are on Patreon, because it really is like
we used to do extended videos on, like, when we first started Patreon, we would do the extended videos, and we stopped doing that because they weren't as good as the short videos, and it bothered me that we were giving the people that were paying us, and like there were some people that were still like, I really want the extended one, but there were just so many times where I'm like, but the story is better in the short one. Like, just trust me, the short one is better.
It's actually a better video because we took out the unnecessary parts.
We started doing a little bonus content this year because we've been riding our bikes so much that we've ended up with like some of these rides that we're like, wow, we filmed this whole thing and we're using it as like a 30-second segment. Like, I might as well edit it together for Patreon. And people seem to have been received really well. Yeah.
I don't call my extended versions extended. I just call them rough cuts, because basically all it is it's me doing my first pass. And I'll actually, when I'm doing that, I'll leave stuff in that I know I'm going to cut already. But it'll just be like some funny conversation that I had with my buddy or whatever. And I think the only reason that I keep doing those is it's already part of my process to edit, like to go through. So it's not really changing much there. But I think people that do watch them, they enjoy seeing the change from that to what the final is. So it's like, oh wow, I got to see like how that story became what it is. And I don't know, like, I don't think you guys do this as much as I do. I've started in the last, I don't know, let's say 6 months. I really use a lot of my old footage. A lot. So I've been telling a lot of like side stories into the ride itself. So my rough cut may have, just this one trail, but the actual final cut could have like so much that's not even in the rough cut,
Interesting. So there's actually additional things in the final that are not in the rough.
Yeah.
Cool.
So I don't know. It's this new format that I've been trying to work with. My last couple of videos, I feel like I'm like refining it right now, where it's like I'm trying to tell a separate story that I'm filming, like more like vloggy kind of in front of the camera as I'm telling the ride story. So like replacing some of the places where I might have just done a voiceover, that like now instead I'm like zipping into me. Like on this current video I'm working with, I'm putting on a set of wheels on my bike as I'm like narrating through this ride that I did. So I'm like using that footage in the middle. So then it kind of also goes into this some of the editing stuff where that I've been listening to, where it's like you're making this other story, so you're then making the person watching want to get back to the original one. But then when they switch, then you're leaving them on something that's like, hey, I just took the wheel out of the box, and like, oh, I want to hear what he has to say about that brand. But now they have to watch the other part again, and it's like some of this like human psychology stuff that they've been doing on television for a long time.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, and it's been fun for me also to tell a story in this like different way. So I don't know. It's where I'm at today.
That's very cool. I feel like that's what you just said is really the thing, is like, that's where I am today. Is like, it's constantly, you're constantly learning, you're changing your editing, maybe not style, but like how much you can do
it better.
Yeah.
that's
Like
the fun
you're
part.
constantly trying to improve. And I feel like what keeps happening for us is we get faster at editing. Yeah. So then we
make it harder,
doing more complex things because we want the videos to be better. And so it doesn't actually
adding
get
in
faster.
More graphics this year, which has been a big headache. 90% of the time, I would say.
It's definitely time consuming, but
it's one of those things where you're like, is the return actually as good as what, like, the time that you're putting into it? Like I've started really paying attention to like my audio more. So before, if I went from a vloggy, like I'm holding the camera talking to it, to like a trail section, like I would just like, it was just a cut, right? And it's like, now you hear the hub and the trail noise and all this. So it's like, now I'm like, okay, I'm ramping the volume from like lower up to where I want it in the first like 3 seconds or something like that. So it's like this smoother transition instead of it being so harsh.
Yeah.
But it's like what you just said, it's things that at the end of the day, it takes so much more time to like make a really good video than it did when I started. And I thought editing took a long time then.
Yes.
It's like, does like, yes, it is like viewing wise way more pleasant to watch than my original videos. But I also started my channel at that spot and like was growing. So does it matter?
I think the question is, does it matter to you?
Yeah.
Because I really think like, I don't know. I mean, I do think there's a little bit of like expectations have changed over time. Like I think in like 2018 when we started, like it was kind of like, I mean, the GoPros weren't as good for starters.
Yeah.
But just the level was not as high as it is now. Like,
I
100%
agree.
The expectations were here. And now the expectations are here.
But I also think like if you can tell a good story, like you can have pretty low production value.
Totally.
Like there are definitely people doing that.
Oh yeah, I mean, all you need is an iPhone if you can tell a good story.
Right.
Like
and you have reasonable audio, because I do think really bad audio, like we had such bad audio at the beginning. That's like my biggest regret with the start of our channel, is how bad our audio was.
Yeah.
Like I think we got away with the footage being not good because we were telling a story and stuff, but some of the audio was so bad. It's like, whoa.
I did that with my
Sorry,
podcast.
Everybody, and thank you for watching those early videos.
It's really a miracle that there's anyone still watching. There are actually more people watching our videos now, but I mean, I think it matters to us because like that's how we keep it fun. And I think a little bit like that's sort of why we plateaued with the Syd Fixes Bikes channel. I mean, there's a couple reasons for that. One is that I started training again and editing videos for multiple channels, and that was like too much.
I mean, really,
that was never the goal. Like, I never wanted to be like a YouTube bike mechanic full time.
Right.
You wanted to race your bike.
I wanted to race my bike full time.
You just couldn't.
But we are going to keep doing videos on that channel. It's just going to be more like, at this point, we're kind of like, well, when we have something that fits over there, we'll put it over there. We did film a full build of Macky's custom painted bike, so God knows when that will get edited, but one day,
one of these days,
and a couple other things.
Those build videos take forever, like forever, because it's like, okay, I could put a bike together in a couple hours. You know what I mean? Like, but if I'm filming, It's all day long because it's like, no, I got to take the break from this angle. Now I need to move my camera over here and take it from this angle. And now I got to screw this bolt in. And I'm going to film the whole thing, even though I know I'm never going to use this. But maybe I might want to use this as some B-roll in some section down the road. So it's like,
yeah, it's such a nightmare.
It's got to be even worse being solo, because at least for us, like,
well,
I'm like
but the thing
around.
Is, otherwise we'd be building it together, so then it would go twice as fast. Yeah,
so
it slows
right?
down the thing, I think.
That's a good point.
Especially because the less competent person is doing everything, so that's really I can't remember what build video. I think it was something we did last year, but it literally took us like 4 days, and we were ready to get divorced. We were just so mad at each other the whole time.
Well, and at the end of it too, you're like, then you do the edit and you use like this little minute fraction of like what you actually filmed.
Totally.
You're like, why?
Yep.
Yeah.
You mentioned you got a new camera. You mind sharing?
Yeah. So thanks to people on Patreon again. Awesome. But I recently bought the new Sony 6700. So they just released it. So it's their APS-C. It's the smaller form factor camera, but it has a really good video aspect, and then also still takes great pictures. Where there's another camera that was like a little bit more leaning towards the video side, but not as much on the camera side, which probably would have still been fine for me. But I've like, as a fun thing, a not YouTube thing, like been getting into taking pictures more. So cool. That part is fun as well, where it's like, there's been some times where I traveled with my wife to somewhere she was working, and it's like, I spent the day at the beach taking pictures of flowers and surfers, and it was just fun, you know, and those pictures will never get anywhere, but I had a good time doing it, you know, and so
that's the important thing. If you're not enjoying it, like any of this, if you're not enjoying it, why do it? It's a lot of work, man.
I think the thing with me though is that I just really enjoy learning things. I think that's what it really comes down to. And I think that's why YouTube speaks to me, is because, like you said earlier, every edit, you're looking up something to learn how to do something, or it's like you see somebody else do some cool transition. You're like, oh, how do I do that? Or how do I animate this? And that's really fun, at least to me, you know, and I think to other people that's a nightmare. You know, you explain an edit to them and they're like, wait a minute, it took you 15 hours to make that video? And you're like, yeah, it was fun.
Yeah. So. I don't know. I feel like at this point, we're both like, we're at the point where we want to focus more on the story.
Yeah.
And so we'd be willing to pay somebody to
do some of the more technical things.
Yeah, the technical things. But the problem is trying to find someone who understands the bike side of it well enough to then, like, I would rather take someone who understands bikes and teach them to edit than take someone who knows how to edit and try to teach them about bikes.
Yeah, it's really hard.
Yeah,
it's interesting. It's definitely, I can understand where you're coming from. I would love to be at a point where I think, for me, let's pose it this way. Would you rather have somebody film you or somebody edit?
Probably film between the two. Yeah.
Because for me, I think if I had to choose, I would rather have somebody like getting all the great B-roll shots and not having to walk up and down the hill, or like,
well, especially for us, with
3 days in a row.
Yeah, like someone who didn't have to be on the start line in 5 minutes, who could like film us while we're panicking and running around. Like, we'd get a lot more really entertaining footage, because the times where we go dark is like, oh, we have to get to this race and things are not going well, you know? So I think it would be very beneficial. We've been sort of tossing around training Mackie's brother and hiring him, which I think would be entertaining for everyone.
Yeah.
Not sure we can sell him on this idea for the budget that we have. He was
he's at least considering it. So
he was also going around and telling everyone we were going to pay him $80,000 a year. And we're like, we're not going to be doing that.
Yeah, we had to be like, it's going to be a lot less than that.
So that podcast that I was talking about, they've been talking about this thing called this service called Stir, and it's like a website or whatever that you can put in other people on your team, and then they can get whatever set percentage of your ad revenue.
Interesting.
So I thought that was interesting to like for some of us out there, you know, like I'm definitely not in a spot where I'm even entertaining hiring somebody that's like more expensive than free. Like I'll hire anybody that's free. like I'm in, but other than that, like this is not a very sustainable monetary income source for me at this point. Or like, how do you say that? Like, I definitely still need my regular job. We'll put it that way.
You haven't quit the 9 to 5 yet.
Yeah. And there's a long way to go for that. But honestly, like if I'm making enough money, and this is one of those things I think I had to do like in my YouTube lifespan or whatever you want to call it, like is get to the point where no, I actually don't think I want to quit my job and be like a full-time YouTuber, but if I can make enough money with this YouTube channel to like do really cool things with the channel and be able to like not have to buy bikes and not have to like buy any of the parts that I'm doing, like purchasing to like make this channel, then that's the right amount, you know, and I'm okay with that. And but like I said at the beginning, it's like, it's definitely not cheap. You know what I mean? It's not like, hey, I bought this Garmin or I bought these power meters so I could tell you guys about it. Even if I got a deal on the power meters, they were still $800, not $1,200. You know, like so that's where the people on Patreon, like they are really dictating that. I would love to be at a point though where I could like at least somebody to help film. You know what I mean? That would be rad.
Would definitely make the bike builds go fast.
Yeah, right. Or maybe I just need like 19 cameras. So
oh my god, we tried that. We
did try that.
We were building. This is such classic us. We were building Mackie's XC bike like 10 hours before we had to get on a flight to Chile.
I don't think it was quite that close, but it
like
was close.
A day and a half before or something. You know, it was last
like
minute.
3 hours.
Right. So we did not have the time to do a Syd Fixes Bikes video. So we're like, maybe if we put like a GoPro in like every corner, we can then edit them to get and like record all the audio through the mics. No, I'm big.
Turns out they heat up and die.
Yeah, the GoPros were like dying right and left, and like, oh, it was a headache. And then you just have 7 hours of footage.
Well, that's what I was gonna say. You get a bunch of different cameras, and oh man, the amount of footage you have that you have to go through.
Yeah, so I kind of think that one probably will never see the light of day. I don't know. Have we given up on it officially?
No.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
not
there
officially.
Somewhere. Someday.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Someday. Yeah. It's definitely it's definitely the more footage you have, the more complicated, you know, and even if it's just like the B-roll or whatever, but it's definitely been nice for me, at least the way that I'm evolving into telling my story now, of having a lot of older stuff to go back to. So like I'm rewriting trails that maybe I haven't ridden in like 4 years on the channel.
Cool.
And I can do a comparison to like, hey, this is how I was on the climb, and I'm like complaining, or like, here, look how slow I was going. I was trying to think of like different stories that I could tell then, where it's like, hey, here's a progression of like, this is what this trail looks like when you're a noob, and this is what this trail looks like when you have a little bit more skill, or you know, or something like that. And I don't know. I really like having that old footage. I used to not care. Like if I used to tell people that like, if I lost all my old footage, I would give a shit. I would like be very like, I would consider quitting YouTube if I lost it all now. You know, like,
do you have
how
like
much I like it.
A giant server that you store it all on, or?
Yeah, I have like a network attached storage. So just it's a lot of space. I think I have like 36 terabytes of usable space, and nice. I'm probably at this point, I mean, I have footage from 2017 till now, so I think I'm using like 18 or 19 terabytes of storage. So
yeah, we've got 16 and only have 2.5 remaining. So I'm like,
Whoops.
time to figure out how to make the NOS a little bigger.
Yeah. And that's like one of those things that, you know, I'm going to keep drilling Patreon like that. That's one of those things that helps for those things where it's like, people don't see like, yeah, when you make this YouTube channel, you're going to have to spend $3,500 on network storage and backup plan so that you don't lose your stuff. You know, like,
it's ridiculous.
It's ridiculous
how much footage we have. Yeah, but it's like you said, like we would be devastated if we lost it. Like, yes, it's for us. I think we have going back to like 2014, 2013.
We have footage from 2012.
Yeah. I mean, it's bad.
It's bad.
We never use it in a video, but
bikes.
Like,
I don't
really
know.
glad we have it.
South America, we used some of that.
We did use some of it. Okay, I take it all back. We did use some of it in a video. It was bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
Yeah, but it's like for the moment. You know what I mean? So
it's okay that it's bad because it's clear that it's old footage.
Yeah. You can do a lot of things with that. It's just really cool to be able to like go back. I noticed on an edit that I was doing a couple weeks ago that I had pulled up some old footage, and it was just looking at the trees that were in the view. We're like, oh my God, that pine tree is like so big now. No. And in that old video, it was like not even in the way, you know?
It's that's cool.
Yeah. It was kind of neat. So I don't know. But what are you guys looking forward to?
Being done with the BTC Bike Race videos.
Yeah, we had like a bit of an editing slog over the next week or two, but
we're almost done with number 2, which means that we have 5 more BC ones, 1 or 2 Downeyville ones, and a 24-hour run.
Yeah.
So we have a bit of a backlog. We're going to Madeira in September, so we're definitely looking forward to that. Yep. So
is that for fun or for
5-day enduro stage race? But yeah, you know, small island owned by Portugal off the coast of Africa, part of the Azores, which we've never been to. So I'm really excited.
Really
it's going to be fun
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My wife's been to the Azores. She really enjoyed that. Her experience there.
We've heard it.
Are you guys going to have any extra time to like do things other than race?
A couple days before that we're going to ride, and then we're going to race, and I can't remember if we're there.
No, I think we head out afterwards.
We kind of learned it's hard to like have fun in the couple days after a stage race.
Yeah.
We've also learned that it's bad to try to fly for 13 hours a day after a race. So there's no winning, really.
Yeah,
unless you're flying business class. Yeah. So if anybody's got the hookup and get us business class on everything,
another 1,000 patrons for that.
That would be awesome.
We got upgraded to business class on our way down to South America, and now we are ruined for life.
Yeah. It was. You had like the like sleeping setup,
like the lie flat thing.
I slept for 7 hours. I got on the plane and went down and was out for 7 hours. And I was like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, our friends who we traveled with to South America, like she flies for work all the time. So she has like United 1K status or whatever. Yeah. So she was able to like put our names on the upgrade list.
It was amazing.
It was pretty special.
So amazing.
But now we're spoiled. So
yeah.
So we're going to get everyone to join Patreon so that we can afford to do business class plane tickets everywhere.
I don't think that's how people join Patreon.
But it will be. It will be. You guys are doing your videos in pretty much like close to 30 minutes now. So what made you decide to go for such a longer format?
That's a great question. I mean, I think at one point we had kind of shortened them. And I think that kind of taught us what was, I think that was a good exercise. Mm-hmm. Definitely like got rid of some stuff that we're like, okay, we're doing too much of this, too much of that. Yep. But I think for these race videos, like people seem pretty stoked on longer videos a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. Like, definitely have not seen like a decrease in viewership that corresponds with length at all.
Retention's really good on them still.
It's like the same. Yeah, I think we usually, I haven't looked recently, but we pretty reliably like have 50% to the end, I would say.
Wow.
Unless we get over.
Right. Yeah. Over 60, that 60K where you get the people that shouldn't be there.
Yeah. Then it like dips and then we're down at like 25, 30%. But up to 60, we're at about 50. Yeah.
How many subscribers do you have on the Syd Macky channel now?
95.
Yeah.
Just about.
Oh, about to get the plaque.
But it's
we're
it's like creeping up so slowly. I don't think people subscribe on YouTube anymore. That's my theory. Like, I really think, like, I don't subscribe to anyone. No offense. Probably we do subscribe to you, actually. I've subscribed to our friends, but it's really like, I don't necessarily subscribe to the channels that I watch because YouTube just like pitches them at me anyway. So it's like, you don't even really need to. Like, I generally feel like I subscribe when I'm like, I want to help this person.
We're doing a pitch in our BC races, like,
because we're like, we really just want to hit 100K. And I swear I'll never ask you to subscribe again after we hit 100K. Because like, we're not going to hit 1 million. I just want the plaque. Okay. Like, it's totally like literally just for the plaque.
Because the problem is right now we're at like 6, maybe 7, maybe 800 a month. So like at that rate, it's going to be like a year still. And we're like,
so that's going to be my pitch. Is like, just subscribe and we'll shut up about this forever.
Yeah. That's a good pitch.
We will never ask you again if you just subscribe this time.
I feel the same way though. Like, I don't know what it is about that plaque. Like, I feel like that's like the only thing that I really want. Like every time I think about quitting YouTube, I'm like, well, I don't have the plaque.
Like,
I mean, we have a plaque. We have one, but we want two.
We have like, space for the other one. It's there already.
Yeah, we did like, erroneously when we hung up our Syd Fixes Bikes plaque last year, we were like, we'll just leave it off center so that when we get the other one 1 year later,
so now we have
still no plaque. So we should probably put that in the pitch. Look, it's off center.
It's off center and it's your fault.
All you OCD people out there that are watching this right now, you want to fix that problem right there, hit subscribe.
Yeah, you just need to have like a space on your awesome bar behind you there that's just empty. Like a glaringly empty space that's the size of the plaque, and be like, it's going to be like that until
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be. So hopefully you guys get there soon, man. That'd be really awesome. I know that it would mean a lot to me, even just to hit like the next milestone for me. Like, it's 20,000. I think that's the pitch that I'm going to start making, is like, I just want to get there. And like, for no other reason than for some reason that number makes me feel like it was worth it or something. I don't know. I don't know why that is. It's like some kind of like psychological thing, because it's not like anything changes. You know what I mean? It's like, it's the same thing, but I don't know. Put a lot of value into it. I guess, you spend so much of your time creating this. It's like you need some kind of rewards that are like something to hang your hat on or something. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Like, it is rewarding to like meet your subscribers and there's lots of other ways as well, but some reason I think because YouTube sets that bar so high, like, it's like, man, there was a ton of work to get there. It's
a metric for sure. And the irony is, like, we look at our videos, and I don't know about you, but for us, it's about 50% of the people who watch our videos are not subscribed. So we're like, literally our worst performing video, if the people who weren't subscribed, we would be so past 100,000. But no, half the people just aren't going to subscribe.
It's really funny. Like, at this 24-hour race, like, none of our friends are subscribed to our channel.
My siblings aren't
Maxie's
subscribed.
brother's like, I don't subscribe. We're like, Bowden, like, I don't subscribe to anyone. I'm like, but could you make an exception?
People like you, Bo.
Right.
And like, Flo, our friend who's like been in our videos, she's like, I make everyone I meet watch the videos and subscribe. She's not subscribed. I'm like, she's like, but I don't really want to make an account. I'm like, I guarantee you have an account.
You have an account, Lo. Everyone has a YouTube account.
I've gone through these like ups and downs with YouTube. One of my, like, it was so bad when YouTube did the thing where they show how long your subscriber's been subscribed. I was like, because like, I've had times where I like get irritated with what YouTube's like sending me, and I'm like, unsubscribe from everybody. I'm like, I don't want to be subscribed to anybody. I want to pick the videos that I want to see, And then like like 3 months later, I'm like, man, why am I never seeing the Syd Macky video? Oh, I'm not subscribed. So then
hilarious.
I'm like,
if it makes you feel better, we never look at that. So you're safe.
I didn't even know that was a thing. You can unsubscribe as many times as you want.
Yeah.
We won't be insulted.
Yeah.
I have thought about that occasionally though, because there are some people that I'm like, I really should have been subscribed to this person a long time ago. So I don't really want to hit the subscribe now because they're going to see it and they're going to be like, what is wrong with you?
Yeah. Well, and because like the way that the YouTube studio shows new subscribers, I think that it like prioritizes who it shows
Bigger
there
channels.
by how big their subscriber count is.
Yeah.
So if you subscribe, because I've done this to somebody else, I can't remember, like in our like friend group where it was
gonna
like,
sit there for like 2 months.
like I didn't know that I wasn't subscribed to. Let's just say it was like Jeff Lasky or something. It was like, but his videos come up all the time. It's like, then you hit it and you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna be there.
Yeah.
Like they're right on the page, you know. Like,
oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, man, it's been 2 hours. Every time I talk to you guys, it goes by so quickly.
Just flies, man.
So
just flies.
Yeah. I don't know why, but we need to make a conscious effort in this next year to actually meet each other in real life. We've been to so many of the same events. And I was telling this story to somebody the other day. I don't know how you guys and me, we like evade each other perfectly. It'll be like Sea Otter, Sedona, whatever it is, and somehow it would be like, yeah, Syd Macky was just here like 10 seconds ago. You know, like so. Let's definitely try to actually cross paths in person this next year.
Make it happen.
That would be great.
Yep.
So
awesome.
Really appreciate you guys honestly coming on the channel and chatting with me. It's such a good time every time. So awesome. It is much apprecied.
And vice versa. Let's not wait 3 years for the next one.
yeah, definitely. So with that being said, those of you guys that haven't subscribed to this channel, do that. But more importantly, if you're going to use one subscribe today, go to the Syd Macky channel and subscribe to Syd Macky. If you haven't already and you're listening on the podcast and you're going to do that, instead of writing me a 5-star review, go to Syd Macky, get them to 100K. It would be great.
5-star review.
Right. There you go. So if you don't want to do any of that and you just want to go on with your life and do something free, just remember, it only takes a bike to be a biker. Get out and be one.